Hello, Tommy. I thought I would read you a bedtime story, seeing as I can't see you tonight. So I've got with me a book of fairy tale stories. So thought I'd read you one and see how we get on. So let's see where we go. First story is about Tinkerbell. There she is. Let's see what happens. So there's the pictures. You see them? Cool. On a chilly winter's night in London, a baby lay peacefully in her crib. As her mobile twirled, the baby let out her very first laugh, and, as with all first laughs, a fairy was born. The laugh floated out of the window and attached itself to a dandelion wisp. It flew above the human world straight towards the second star to the right, and through a burst of light to Neverland. Queen Clarion approached. Born of laughter, clothed in cheer, happiness has brought you here. Welcome to Pixie Hollow, she said. The newcomer flapped her wings. She could fly. Next, other fairies began to place objects in front of her. These objects will help you find your talent, the Queen explained. The new fairy timidly placed her hand on each object, but nothing happened. She was discouraged, but as she passed the hammer, it started to glow. Then it flew straight to her. I've never seen one glow that much, said Silvermist. Vidya fumed. She had one of the strongest and rarest talents in Pixie Hollow, and she wasn't looking for competition. Come forward, Tinker Fairies, called the Queen, and welcome the newest member of your talent guild, Tinkerbell. Bubble and Clank, two Tinker Fairies, took Tinkerbell to Tinker's Nook. She saw a small courtyard lined with twig and leaf cottages. Fairies were fixing and fashioning all kinds of amazing, useful objects. Clank and Bobble dropped Tinkerbell off at their own little house. All the clothes in her closet were much too big. Luckily, Tink knew just what to do. Tinkerbell put on her new dress, tied up her hair, and reported to the workshop. Soon, Fairy Mary, the no-nonsense fairy who ran Tinker's Nook, arrived. So dainty, Fairy Mary exclaimed as she looked at Tink's hands. Don't worry, dear. We'll build up those tinker muscles in no time. Then, after reminding Clank and Bobble to make their deliveries, Fairy Mary was gone. A little while later, Tink, Clank and Bobble set out to deliver some springtime items to the nature fairies, with help from Cheese, the mouse. Suddenly the fairies heard a sound behind them. Pitter-patter, pitter-patter, pitter-patter. Sprinting thistles, ah! Screamed Clank. The weeds nearby had come to life and were rushing towards them. The wagon flew down the path and crashed in the middle of Springtime Square. Thankfully, the Tinkers were unhurt. They began to make their deliveries. There were milkweed pod satchels for an animal fairy named Fawn, pussy willow brushes for a garden fairy named Rosetta, and rainbow tubes for Iridessa, a water fairy. A light fairy named Silvermist was there too. She sprayed water into the air. When Iridessa flew through the droplets, a perfect rainbow was formed. Iridessa rolled it up into a tube. I am going to take it to the mainland, she explained to Tink. What's the mainland? The new fairy asked. It's where we go for spring, to change the seasons, replied Silvermist. Next, the Tinkers stopped at the flower meadow. Vidya zipped by, using her whirlwind to pull pollen from the flowers. Hi, said Tinkerbell. What's your talent? Duh, I'm a fast-flying fairy, answered Vidya. I make breezes in summer and blow down leaves in autumn. Fairies of every talent depend on me. Tinkers help fairies of every talent too, Tink said excitedly. I make forces of nature. You make pots and kettles, Vidya pointed out. It's not like spring depends on you. When I go to the mainland, I'll prove just how important we are, Tink replied. Tink flew off, grumbling to herself. Soon, however, she was distracted by something shiny down on the beach. She flew closer. It was a coin. Tink began digging. Before long, she had found all sorts of treasures. She scooped them up and took them to the workshop. You found lost things, exclaimed Clank when Tink arrived. They wash up on Neverland from time to time, said Bobble. Not much good for anything, though. Fairy Mary whisked Tink's trinkets away. The Queen's review of springtime preparations was that night, and there was still a lot to do. Tink really knew this was her chance to prove just how important a tinker's talent really was. That evening, the Minister of Spring welcomed Queen Clarion to the review ceremony. When the ever-blossom blooms, we will be ready to bring spring to the mainland, he said proudly. Suddenly, Tinkerbell arrived. I came up with some fantastic things for tinkers to use when we go to the mainland, she called. Before the Queen could say anything, Tink pulled out a huge homemade paint sprayer. But instead of spraying colour, it exploded, making a huge mess. The Queen looked at Tinkerbell kindly. Tinker fairies don't go to the mainland, she said. All the springtime work is done by the nature fairies. I'm sorry. Tink returned to the workshop. Being a tinker stinks, she grumbled. Excuse me, said Fairy Mary. Why don't we get to go to the mainland, Tink asked. The day you can magically make the flowers grow or capture the rays of the sun, you can go. Until then, your work is here, said Fairy Mary impatiently. Suddenly, Tink smiled. She had an idea. Dum dum dum. And I shall read you more tomorrow. Night night.